You need to comply with my instructions immediately.
I understand, Ronnie.
I know my rights. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me why I'm stopped.
Ma'am, we need to see proof of citizenship. Now. The words cut through the air like a command, sharp and unquestioned, landing hard in the middle of a sun-scorched parking lot. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon at a Lowe's home improvement in San Antonio, Texas. The kind of heat that presses down on you, that makes the air ripple above the asphalt. Across the street, a digital bank sign blinked steadily 102 degrees. Natasha Reeves had just finished loading lumber into the bed of her pickup truck. Pressure-treated boards. Long and heavy. Stacked with care. She was building a deck in her backyard. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. 34 years old. Faded Spurs t-shirt. Jeans. Work boots dusted white from the lumber aisle. Her hair pulled back. Her movements efficient. Practiced. Nothing about her looked dangerous. Nothing about her looked illegal. She reached for her driver's door when she heard boots behind her, not hurried. Not hesitant. But deliberate. Purposeful. The sound of people used to being obeyed. 3 federal agents stepped into her peripheral vision. Tactical vests, ice badges catching the sunlight, body cameras already recording. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The lead agent said, his hand resting casually near his belt, "We need to verify your citizenship." Natasha turned slowly, deliberately. Her hands stayed visible at her sides. "On what grounds?" she asked. Calm. Almost conversational. "What probable cause do you have to stop me?" The question hung there. The agents didn't answer it. Instead, they moved. One stepped closer. Another shifted to her right. The third drifted left. A textbook containment formation, subtle. Practiced. Unmistakable. The parking lot security camera mounted near the garden center entrance captured everything in crisp, unforgiving detail. The bright afternoon sun left no shadows to hide in. The timestamp glowed in the corner of the frame 141537. "This is a targeted inquiry," the agent said. "We've received reports of document fraud in this area." Natasha looked from one face to the next. "Document fraud," she repeated. "And what specific information connects me to that?" Silence. A car rolled past. Somewhere a shopping cart clattered. Life continued around them. Unaware that a line had just been crossed. "You saw a black woman loading lumber into a truck," Natasha said evenly, and decided to demand papers. "That's not a targeted inquiry. That's racial profiling." The lead agent's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, if you're here legally, this will only take 5 minutes," he said, stepping closer. Invading her space. "Show us your papers." Natasha didn't raise her voice. "I don't have to show you anything without reasonable suspicion," she replied. "The Fourth Amendment protects me from unreasonable seizures." She paused, letting the words settle. "And I'm not giving up my rights just because you have a badge." The agents assumed this would be routine. They were wrong. They had no idea that the woman standing in front of them had spent years in war zones, where one bad assumption could get you killed. And they had no idea that this parking lot under the Texas sun, with cameras rolling, was about to become the most expensive mistake of their careers. For a brief moment, no one spoke. The heat pressed down harder, the kind that makes tempers short and decisions sloppy. The security camera caught it all, the agent's weight shifting. Natasha standing still, grounded, unflinching. The lead agent broke the silence. "We're part of a joint federal task force," he said. "We've been directed to conduct targeted inquiries at commercial locations linked to document fraud." Natasha nodded slowly, as if considering his words. Okay, she said. Then tell me what description you were given. What evidence ties me to any crime? The question was precise, surgical. The agent didn't answer it. Instead, one of the others moved half a step closer, closing the space between them. The formation tightened. The camera captured the shift subtle, coordinated, intentional. Ma'am, this isn't a debate, the lead agent said. You're being temporarily detained. Detained requires reasonable suspicion. Natasha replied immediately. What is it? Another pause. A man loading bags of soil into his trunk stopped and stared. A woman walking toward the entrance slowed her pace, sensing something wrong. You keep saying document fraud. Natasha continued, her voice steady and clear. But you haven't told me a single fact connecting me to it. Not one. She gestured toward the open parking lot. This is a public place. I was buying lumber. I've committed no crime. If your only reason for stopping me is how I look, that's not law enforcement. That's profiling. One agent glanced at the others. He looked uncomfortable. The lead agent didn't. Refusing to cooperate makes this suspicious, he said. If you're a citizen, prove it. Natasha exhaled slowly through her nose. Refusing to waive my rights is not suspicious, she said. That's settled law. She let the words hang there, loud enough for the nearby witnesses to hear. I am not required to prove my citizenship to you in a parking lot without probable cause. That's not how the Constitution works. The lead agent stepped closer again. So close the camera captured the invasion of her personal space. This will only take 5 minutes. He repeated, or you're coming with us. That was the moment. The moment where a casual stop turned into a confrontation. The moment where authority stopped asking and started demanding. Natasha's eyes hardened not with anger, but with focus. Years of military training kicked in. Not the kind that teaches you to fight, but the kind that teaches you to think under pressure, to control information, to document everything. Slowly, deliberately. She reached into her pocket. The movement was careful, measured, designed to leave no room for misinterpretation. I'm going to record this interaction, she said clearly. She pulled out her phone. A woman near the entrance stopped completely. Watching. A man leaned against his truck, his own phone already coming up. The agents noticed. Their confidence flickered. I'm invoking my Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable seizure, Natasha continued, her voice carrying across the lot. I do not consent to any search. I do not consent to any detention. She paused, and for the record, she added, I'm a United States Army veteran, honorably discharged. 2 tours in Afghanistan. The agents didn't know it yet, but this was no longer their stop. This was now a record. The phone was in her hand now, held chest high. Screen glowing. Lens pointed outward. Not threatening, not hidden. Exactly where every movement could be seen. The lead agent's eyes flicked to it. You can't record us, he said. I absolutely can. Natasha replied, This is a public place, and I'm recording for my safety. The parking lot felt different now, heavier, charged. People had stopped pretending not to watch. A man by the carts leaned forward, curious. Another shopper slowed her steps, eyes fixed on the growing circle around Natasha. I want to be very clear, Natasha said, her voice steady, projecting. I am invoking my Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable seizure. I am not resisting. I am not fleeing. She turned slightly so the phone captured all 3 agents. I am a United States citizen. I am an Army veteran. My truck has veteran plates. Visible behind me. You have no probable cause to stop me. The lead agent clenched his jaw. If you're legal, then show us your ID and we'll be done, he said. Natasha didn't raise her voice. That's not how rights work. She replied, You don't get to detain me first and justify it later. She tapped her screen. And since you're continuing this stop without articulable suspicion, I'm calling my attorney. The agents froze. She didn't rush the motion. Didn't look down. Her thumb moved deliberately. Every second recorded by multiple cameras. The dial tone was brief. Then, a voice came through the speaker, calm, sharp, unmistakably professional. This is Diana Velasquez with the Texas Civil Rights Project. Who am I speaking with? Natasha held the phone out slightly so the sound carried. My name is Natasha Reeves, she said. I'm in the Lowe's parking lot on Blanco Road. I'm being detained by federal agents without probable cause. They're demanding proof of citizenship. There it was. The sentence that changed everything. The lead agent's posture shifted, just slightly, enough for the camera to catch. Officers, Velasquez said, her voice firm through the speaker. I am recording this call. What is your probable cause for stopping my client? No one answered. What crime is she suspected of committing? Velasquez pressed. Be specific. The silence stretched. A cart rattled past in the background. A truck door slammed somewhere off-screen. The timestamp ticked forward. Natasha stood perfectly still. Phone extended. Hands visible. She wasn't performing. She wasn't posturing. She was building a record. I have invoked my Fourth Amendment rights, Natasha said into the phone. They have not articulated any reasonable suspicion. Understood. Velasquez replied. Officers, if you cannot articulate probable cause or reasonable suspicion, you are required to release her immediately. The lead agent swallowed. We're conducting a targeted inquiry, he said finally. Velasquez didn't miss a beat. That's not probable cause, she said. What specific facts connect my client to criminal activity? No answer. The parking lot had gone quiet in a way that only happens when something is wrong. And for the first time since they approached her, the agents realized this wasn't just a stop anymore. It was evidence. The lead agent exhaled sharply, as if patience itself were a favor he was running out of. We have discretion under our operational directive, he said. We're allowed to verify immigration status. Attorney Velasquez's voice cut through the speaker, crisp and unyielding. Discretion is not a blank check, she said. You still need reasonable suspicion. What is it? The question landed hard. No one answered. The security camera caught everything, now the agent's eyes darting. The subtle tightening of shoulders. The way authority looked less certain when forced to explain itself. Natasha didn't move. She didn't interrupt. She knew this moment. In intelligence work, silence was never empty. Silence was pressure. Officers, Velasquez continued. My client is standing in a public parking lot. She has identified herself as a U and one douses, citizen and veteran. She has committed no crime in your presence. If you continue to detain her, you are violating clearly established constitutional law. A woman near the store entrance raised her phone higher. Zooming in, another shopper whispered, What's going on? The lead agent stepped forward again, closing the gap between himself and Natasha. This will be quick, he said, his tone sharpening. 5 minutes. Show us your ID. Natasha met his eyes. I'm not required to sacrifice my rights for your convenience. She said, You're escalating without cause. She turned slightly, making sure the phone captured his face clearly. For the record, she added, You still haven't given me a single articulable fact connecting me to any crime. The agent's jaw tightened. Refusal to cooperate makes this suspicious, he snapped. Velasquez responded instantly. That statement is legally incorrect, she said. Refusing consent is not suspicion. It never has been. The crowd had grown now. At least 10 people stood watching, some openly filming, others frozen, sensing that something important was unfolding. The agents could feel it. They were no longer in control of the narrative. The lead agent glanced briefly at his partners. One avoided his eyes. The other shifted his weight. Uneasy. We're going to need you to come with us for processing, the lead agent said at last. There it was. The sentence that crossed the line. Natasha didn't raise her voice. She didn't step forward. She took one slow, measured step back, defensive, deliberate, controlled. I am not resisting, she said clearly. I am not fleeing, but I am not going anywhere with you. She lifted her phone slightly. You are attempting to seize me without probable cause. That is unlawful. Attorney Velasquez's voice hardened. Officers, do not touch my client, she warned. If you detain her without lawful justification, you are violating the Fourth Amendment, and you will be personally named. For a split second, time seemed to stall. Heat. Silence. Cameras rolling. The agents had a choice. Walk away or force a mistake that could never be undone. And the lead agent chose wrong. The lead agent stepped forward. Not fast. Not rushed. But with the quiet certainty of someone used to compliance, his hand closed around Natasha's arm. The moment was unmistakable. The security camera captured it in perfect clarity, fingers gripping fabric. Pressure applied. Control asserted. I am not resisting, Natasha said immediately, her voice loud and clear, projecting beyond the agents, beyond the parking lot. I am being seized without probable cause. Her body tensed, not in panic, but in discipline. Years of training surfaced instantly how to brace, how to stay upright, how to make every movement deliberate. Attorney Velasquez's voice came through the phone, sharp with urgency. Do not touch her, she warned. You are now violating her constitutional rights. This is unlawful. The agent ignored her. Another agent moved in behind Natasha. A third scanned the growing crowd, his hand hovering near his belt. The containment formation tightened. Phones were everywhere now. A man leaned out of his truck window, recording. A woman near the entrance covered her mouth in shock. Someone said, "Oh my God," under their breath. I am a United States citizen, Natasha said loudly. I am a combat veteran. I served this country. The words weren't a plea. They were a record. The agent twisted her arm behind her back. Metal snapped shut. Handcuffs. The sound echoed louder than it should have in the open air. I am not resisting, Natasha repeated. I am complying under protest. This is an unlawful arrest. The security camera caught the exact second the cuffs locked, timestamp glowing. Undeniable. One agent looked away. Another shifted uncomfortably. The lead agent didn't. Turn around, he ordered. Natasha did. Slowly, controlled, every movement broadcast. I want badge numbers, she said. All of you. Names and supervisors. You'll get that at processing, the agent replied, gripping her arm and steering her toward the outer lot. Am I under arrest? Natasha asked, loud enough for every witness to hear. If so, what are the charges? You're being detained for processing, the agent said. Detention requires reasonable suspicion. Natasha replied, arrest requires probable cause. Which is it? No answer. They walked her out of frame of the security camera, but not out of view of the crowd, not out of view of the phones, not out of the recording still running in her cuffed hand. Attorney Velasquez's voice stayed on the line. Natasha, keep stating that you are not resisting. She instructed, keep everything verbal. You're doing exactly what you should. Natasha nodded once. She could feel the stares, the heat, the weight of the moment settling in. This was no longer about whether the agents were wrong. This was about how much their mistake was going to cost. And they were about to find out. They stopped beside a black federal SUV parked at the far edge of the lot. Tinted windows, engine running, back door already open. This was the moment they expected compliance. Natasha didn't give it to them. She planted her feet, not wide, not aggressive, just immovable. I'm not getting into that vehicle, she said clearly. Her voice steady despite the cuffs biting into her wrists. I have not been lawfully detained. I have not been charged with any crime. The lead agent leaned in closer. Get in the vehicle, he ordered. I am not resisting. Natasha replied, but I am not voluntarily complying with an unlawful order. The words were calm, precise, chosen carefully. Attorney Velasquez's voice came through the phone, still on speaker despite being trapped between Natasha's cuffed hands. Officers, you are on notice. She said, my client is a U.S.S. citizen and a veteran. You have no probable cause. If you transport her from this location, you are committing an unlawful seizure. The crowd had grown. At least 15 people now. Phones raised. Cameras rolling. No one looking away. A Lowe's employee stood near the entrance. Frozen. One hand pressed to her mouth. A man in a pickup slowed almost to a stop, filming through his open window. This wasn't just an arrest anymore. It was a spectacle, and spectacles create accountability. The lead agent tightened his grip on Natasha's arm. Ma'am, last warning, he said. Get in the vehicle. Natasha didn't move. If you put me in that SUV, she said evenly, you are kidnapping me? The word landed like a punch. One of the agents glanced at the others. Another took a step back, physically distancing himself from the decision being made. Maybe we should call the supervisor, he muttered, barely audible. We don't need a supervisor. The lead agent snapped, but the confidence was gone now, replaced by tension. By calculation, Natasha spoke again, louder this time, projecting toward the crowd. I am not resisting. I am being detained without probable cause. This is unconstitutional. Attorney Velasquez didn't let the moment pass. I am contacting your San Antonio field office right now, she said. Your supervisor will be notified within minutes. I strongly advise you to release my client immediately. The standoff stretched. Seconds felt longer under the sun. The agent stood locked in place, one gripping authority too tightly, the others visibly retreating from it. And then the radio on the lead agent's shoulder crackled to life. Agent Hayes. A voice said, stand by. Every head turned. The power in the parking lot shifted. Because when supervisors get involved, mistakes stop being private, and consequences begin. The radio crackled again. Agent Hayes. The voice repeated. Sharper now. Release the subject immediately. The words cut through the parking lot. For a moment, The lead agent didn't move. The security camera caught his face jaw tight. Eyes narrowed. Flushed with heat and something closer to humiliation. "Stand down," the supervisor said again. "That is a direct order." Hayes finally exhaled. His grip loosened. The metal cuffs came off not gently, not apologetically, but fast and rough, as if anger had replaced authority. Natasha flexed her wrists as the pressure released. Red marks were already forming where the metal had bitten into her skin. "I want your badge numbers," she said immediately. "Names and supervisor contact information. You can file a complaint at the office." Hayes muttered, already turning away. "No." Natasha replied calmly, "I'm not going to your office." She held up her phone. "Still recording. I'm going to my attorney. I'm going to civil rights organizations. And I'm going to court." Hayes didn't respond. He climbed into the SUV and slammed the door. The second vehicle pulled away moments later. One agent avoided eye contact. Another looked shaken. They left the parking lot without a word. Natasha stood where they'd left her, breathing slowly, grounding herself. Attorney Velasquez's voice came through the phone. "Natasha, are you okay?" "I am," Natasha said. Her voice trembled just slightly now that the danger had passed. "Shaken, but okay. That footage is gold," Velasquez replied. "Every second of it." Natasha looked directly up at the security camera mounted on the light pole. She'd noticed it when she parked. Old habits from intelligence work. Always know where the cameras are. Always control the narrative. They didn't get what they wanted. Natasha said, "What they wanted doesn't matter." Velasquez replied, "What they did was illegal." As traffic resumed and shoppers went back to their errands, Natasha stood alone in the heat, rubbing her wrists. The encounter was over, but the consequences were just beginning. Because once power is caught on camera breaking the law, it doesn't walk away. It follows you, all the way to court. 2 hours later, Natasha Reeves was sitting in a quiet conference room. An ice pack wrapped loosely around her wrists. The red marks from the handcuffs had darkened into bruises. Attorney Diana Velasquez sat across from her, laptop open, already replaying the footage. Not just one angle, all of them. The Lowe's parking lot security camera, Natasha's phone recording, early requests already sent for the agent's body cameras and radio logs. Velasquez paused the video at the exact moment the agent's hand closed around Natasha's arm. "That," she said calmly, tapping the screen, "is the moment qualified immunity dies." Within 48 hours, preservation letters were sent to ICE and every agency involved in the Joint Task Force. No footage deleted. No reports altered. No timelines clarified. Every second mattered. By the end of the week, Velasquez had the body cam footage, and it was worse than expected. The cameras captured the agents, admitting offhandedly that they had no description, no warrant, no specific suspect. One voice was caught saying, "She's probably undocumented. Let's just check." That single sentence would later be played in court again and again. 2 weeks after the parking lot detention, the complaint was filed in federal court. Natasha Reeves v. United States of America. The allegations were direct, unforgiving, unlawful seizure, Fourth Amendment violations, racial profiling, excessive force, failure to intervene. The government responded quickly. Too quickly. An offer came within days. $50,000. No admission of wrongdoing. Just go away money. Velasquez didn't even counter. She slid the offer across the table to Natasha. Natasha laughed once short. Incredulous. They handcuffed a combat veteran in public. she said. For existing. Velasquez nodded. They're scared, she said, and they should be. The offer went unanswered. A week later, the government came back with 200,000. Still no admission. Still no accountability. Velasquez's response was 3 words long. Prepare for trial. Because this case was never about a settlement. It was about putting federal power on display under oath. Under lights. And under the Constitution. And once that happens, there's no hiding from what the cameras already saw. 15 months later, the courtroom in San Antonio was standing room only. Not because it was a celebrity trial. Because everyone understood what was at stake. Veterans filled the gallery. Some in uniform. Others wearing faded caps and service pins. Civil rights observers lined the back rows. Local media cameras were set up quietly. Lenses trained forward. When the jury filed in, the room went still. 12 Texans. Different ages. Different backgrounds. Ordinary people about to judge extraordinary power. The first exhibit played without commentary. The Lowe's parking lot security footage. Bright afternoon light. Clear audio. No editing. No spin. The jury watched the agents approach Natasha. Saw the formation close in. Heard the demand for papers. They watched her ask. Again and again. For probable cause. They watched the silence. Then the body camera footage followed. Different angles. Same story. Agents admitting they had no description. No suspect. No corroborated intelligence. One voice. Casual and dismissive. Let's just check. The courtroom shifted. Jurors leaned forward. This wasn't complicated. This wasn't nuanced. This was visible. Then came Natasha's testimony. She didn't dramatize. She didn't embellish. She explained. 2 tours in Afghanistan. Army intelligence. Bronze Star for valor. Then, the parking lot. The confusion. The disbelief. The moment she realized they weren't going to stop unless she forced them to. I knew where the security camera was. She told the jury. I stood in its view on purpose. She explained her training. Document everything. Control the narrative. Never disappear without a record. I did everything right. She said. They didn't. Some jurors wiped their eyes. Others clenched their jaws. This wasn't about politics. This was about whether the Constitution still meant what it said. And the evidence was speaking louder than anyone in the room. The defense tried to save the case with 2 words. Qualified immunity. They argued the agents had acted in good faith. That the law wasn't clearly established. That they were just following training and directives. Attorney Diana Velasquez dismantled that argument piece by piece. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She introduced the agents' own training manuals into evidence. Highlighted sections. Clear language. No ambiguity. Reasonable suspicion required for detention. Anonymous tips insufficient without corroboration. Race or appearance alone prohibited as a basis for enforcement. These aren't my rules. Velasquez told the jury. These are theirs. Then she called Supervisor Thornton to the stand. The same voice that had ended the parking lot standoff. Under oath. He didn't hesitate. Based on the footage and reports, he said, this stop should never have occurred. The courtroom went silent. The defense tried to redirect, tried to soften, but the damage was done. Qualified immunity depends on uncertainty. This case had none. The agents knew the law. They violated it anyway. Velasquez closed by returning to the footage. The Constitution doesn't bend because someone has a badge, she said. And it doesn't disappear because someone is black in a parking lot. The jury didn't look confused. They looked decided. Because when the system admits it was wrong on the record, there's nowhere left to hide. The jury deliberated for 6 days. 6 long days where no one spoke publicly. No leaks. No speculation. Just 12 citizens alone with the evidence. Natasha waited at home. Not pacing. Not watching the news. She worked on the deck. She'd started the day, everything went wrong. Sanded boards. Set screws. Focused on small, tangible things, the kind you can control. On the 6th afternoon, her phone rang. "Verdict's in," Velasquez said. "Get to the courthouse." By the time Natasha arrived, the courtroom was overflowing. People stood along the walls. Veterans filled every seat. Reporters lined the back. Notebooks ready. Cameras silent. The jury filed in. No one spoke. The foreperson, a retired schoolteacher named Patricia Gonzalez, stood holding a single sheet of paper. Her voice didn't shake. "We find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Then it broke. Gasps. Tears. Hands flying to mouths. Natasha closed her eyes and exhaled a breath she'd been holding since the parking lot. But the trial wasn't over. The damages phase began the next morning. Jurors heard about the aftermath, not just the bruises on her wrists, but the ones no one could see. The anxiety, the hypervigilance, the way authority no longer felt protective. Experts testified. Economists, psychologists, veterans who explained what it meant to serve your country and then be treated like an enemy at home. When the jury returned the second time, the tension was different. Heavier. The foreperson stood again. Compensatory damages $4.7 million. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Punitive damages $3.3 million. The room erupted. $8 million. Not a settlement. A verdict. A message. Federal agents don't get to ignore the Constitution and walk away. The judge banged the gavel. Order was restored. But nothing about that courtroom was the same anymore. Because power had been judged. And it had lost. The verdict didn't just end a trial. It started consequences. Within weeks, Agent Hayes was terminated. One agent resigned quietly. Another was reassigned to a desk position. Far from field operations, the San Antonio field office underwent an internal review. Training protocols were rewritten. Supervisory approval requirements were tightened. Public statements were issued carefully worded, non-admitting, but unmistakably reactive. The government never apologized. They didn't need to. The jury had already spoken. Natasha Reeves walked out of the courthouse that day not as a victim, but as a precedent. She used part of the verdict to establish the Veterans Rights Defense Fund, providing free legal representation to veterans facing unlawful stops, racial profiling, and civil rights violations. She began speaking publicly, not as an activist, not as a politician, but as someone who had lived the cost of silence. Her parking lot confrontation became required viewing in civil rights trainings. Law schools dissected it. Police academies studied it not as a warning about civilians, but about unchecked authority. And that Lowe's parking lot, the security camera is still there, still recording, capturing ordinary afternoons, shopping carts, sunlight on asphalt. Because sometimes, the cameras watching us aren't there to control us. Sometimes they exist to protect us if we're brave enough to stand in their view, know our rights, and refuse to disappear quietly. Natasha didn't fight back with force. She fought back with the Constitution. And she won. If you believe veterans deserve better, if you believe the Fourth Amendment means something, if you believe standing up for your rights is the most American thing you can do, subscribe Because these stories matter. And freedom only survives when people are willing to defend it